Hey guys, tonight we wander deep into a myth that's equal parts music contest, woodland drama, and divine overreaction. You're stepping into a time when gods got bored easily, mortals made bold choices, and satyrs thought flutes were a good idea. You'll hear lyres being tuned beneath olive trees, arguments whispered through reed groves, and the soft clink of gold, because even ancient myth has a flair for the theatrical. You probably won't survive this, of course. Not because it's dangerous, but because entering a musical contest with Apollo is like challenging Beyoncé to karaoke at her own birthday party. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight, and what time is it in your part of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step carefully through a sleepy forest in the region of Phrygia, where the leaves are sticky with dusk and everything glows just faintly golden, like someone sprinkled powdered sunlight across the moss. The cicadas have clocked out for the night, replaced by the long, rhythmic whoosh of wind through olive branches. In the distance, water trickles from a forgotten spring, and you can just make out a flickering torchlight moving between the trees. Welcome to a time before the world got loud. Your sandals are a bit too tight, which you realize only after half an hour of walking over knobbly roots and suspiciously slippery rocks. There are no roads here, just goat trails and lazy deer paths. But you're not lost. You're being pulled somewhere toward music, or maybe toward mischief. Eventually, you find yourself at a clearing. It's moonlit, yes, but more than that, it feels rehearsed, like this forest knew you were coming. There are boulders perfectly positioned like amphitheater seats. There's a hint of roasted fig in the air, and the moss underfoot is suspiciously cushiony. Something's up. At the center stands a stone slab that's trying very hard to look natural. But it's not. It's been chiseled into a stage, probably by some underpaid forest spirits. On it, half buried in moss, is a wooden cup still glistening with wine. You can hear music, just the faint plucking of strings, the start of a melody testing itself out. You're not hallucinating, you're in the realm of myth. And it's one of the quieter myths, the kind they don't shout about in temples, but whisper beside campfires. This is where Marsyas and Apollo are destined to meet. But not yet. Right now, the forest feels drowsy and expectant. It's not quite summer, not quite spring. The birds have gone quiet, perhaps out of respect or sheer disinterest. You crouch down beside a tree that looks like it's holding a secret, its bark cracked in shapes that could pass for runes if you squint. A small beetle walks over your sandal strap like it owns the place. Then there's a snap of twig. You freeze. But it's just a sadder one of the younger ones, skipping by with a fennel stalk in his teeth and a basket full of grapes clearly stolen from somewhere. He doesn't acknowledge you. Typical. But you hear him mutter something as he disappears into the trees. The gods are playing tonight. You don't respond. You just sit and wait. Historians still argue whether this grove ever had a name. Some claim it was part of the ancient kingdom of Midas. Others say it belonged to no one, a borderland of myth, like the Bermuda Triangle, but with more goats. What's certain is that people came here centuries ago to tell the story of a contest. A contest so pointless, so absolutely mismatched, that it could only happen in Greek mythology. And as you shift your weight on a convenient cushion of thyme and clover, you spotted a tree stump carved into a bench, and next to it, a musical note etched into the bark. Someone wanted this place remembered. It's getting colder now. Not unpleasant, just that early nightfall chill that sneaks up on you. You pull your cloak, which you didn't have a second ago, but somehow now do, thank you. Narrative dream logic a bit tighter, and rest your back against a tree. The branches creak like old violins, and the moon has shifted to center stage. You try to imagine what kind of contest is worth gathering gods, satyrs, dryads, and the occasional wandering king. You think about the music, about the instruments, about the one satyr who decided against all odds to challenge Apollo, literal god of music, to a duel. You don't know his name yet, but you will. Somewhere behind you, you hear soft clapping leaves rustling against each other. like an audience warming up. Maybe the myth is about to begin. Maybe it already has. You feel the ground hum, just a little, like someone tuning the world. In the corner of your vision, you see a silver glint. Not a star, not a torch, something metallic strung with golden threads. A lyre. You're not supposed to touch it. You know that instinctively. You reach anyway. But before your fingers make contact, there's a sudden gust of wind, and the scent of laurel and leather Apollo has entered the scene. You blink once, then again because standing there, casually leaning against a cypress tree like he invented posture, is Apollo. And well, he kind of did. His robe is doing that magical Greek god thing where it never wrinkles. Always catches the moonlight just right, and somehow makes everyone else feel underdressed, even in a forest. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. You can feel the confidence radiating off him, like the residual heat from a stone bench in summer. He's holding a lyre, small, elegant, glowing faintly as if it remembers every song ever played on it. He runs his fingers across the strings once, and the sound that emerges is infuriatingly perfect. Not flashy, not loud. Just one of those notes that makes the back of your neck do the thing where the hairs salute involuntarily. Apollo hums. Not a melody, not yet just the musical equivalent of stretching before a jog. You sit a little straighter, even though you're not performing. Somehow you feel judged. Not harshly, just divinely. Now here's a mainstream historical fact for your sleepy brain. In the ancient Greek world, Apollo wasn't just the god of music, he was also the god of healing, prophecy, sunlight, poetry, and archery. Basically, if there were high school yearbooks for Mount Olympus, Apollo would have won, most likely to already have a fan club. But tonight, here in this quiet grove, he's just a musician with something to prove. He starts plucking out a melody, slowly, like he's carving a story into the air. Each note lands gently, making the night feel richer, deeper. A nearby owl swoons in the branches and decides not to hoot out of respect. As you watch him play, you notice something else. He's not alone. A faint shimmer in the underbrush, a flicker near the tree trunks. Nymphs, dozens of them. Hair like ivy, eyes like dew, expressions like bored aristocrats at a charity ball. They've clearly heard Apollo play before. Still, they sway ever so slightly to the music, like it's compulsory. Like even their indifference has rhythm. And you, of course, sit perfectly still, not daring to sneeze or shift or breathe too loudly, not in the presence of that sound. Now here's a quirkier tidbit. The Greeks believed Apollo's lyre was strung with the intestines of a tortoise. Yep. The original instrument was apparently gifted by Hermes, who when he was just a baby made it out of a turtle shell, some reeds, and a bit of celestial mischief. You try not to think about the turtle. You try to focus on the music. Apollo doesn't look at you. He doesn't look at anyone, really. His eyes are closed, brows relaxed, every muscle tuned like his instrument. The kind of performance that says, I don't need applause. I am applause. Then just when you think this could go on forever, that you might actually fall asleep under a tree while Apollo improvises divine jazz, he stops. Not abruptly, gently, like a painter setting down their brush or a baker dusting off the last bit of flour. He opens his eyes, glances upward as if checking for stardust, and finally looks toward the edge of the grove. You follow his gaze. Something is rustling through the undergrowth. Not delicate like the nymphs, not regal like Apollo, more shaggy, chaotic, definitely not wearing sandals. And then, emerging like a misplaced bar guest from a Renaissance festival, comes Marsyas. Now, historians still argue whether Marsyas was truly just a satyr or something more. Some call him a daemon of the river. Others, a mortal touched by divine chaos. Whatever the case, he is in this moment a glorious mess. His hair is wild. His eyes are wide. And he's carrying a flute. Well, not just a flute. The flute. Two reeds bound together, worn smooth by fingers and breath. This isn't the polished silver pipe you see in orchestras. This is raw, handmade, possibly cursed, possibly genius. He spots Apollo, smirks, not in a rude way, just confident, the kind of smirk that says, "Yeah, I heard you play. And I brought something weirder." Apollo raises an eyebrow. Marcius doesn't bow. He plops down on a nearby rock, scratches behind his goat-like ear, and plays one sharp, twirling note. It zips through the air like a dragonfly, stirs a breeze, and makes one nymph giggle despite herself. The contest hasn't been declared yet, but it's coming. You can feel it. And for just a moment, you're suspended in a kind of mythological silence. Two musicians on opposite ends of a clearing, one divine and polished, the other earthy and wild. One strums light into existence, the other breathes thunder into wood. You lean back against your tree again, maybe shift your cloak, maybe glance up at the stars, wondering how many of them are watching this from Olympus with popcorn. Because whether it's written in stone or whispered in reeds, this is the night Apollo met his match. Marcius taps his hoof against a root like he's warming up for something, or maybe just impatient. You're not sure if he's even aware of the godly presence across from him. If he is, he doesn't seem impressed. Then again, satyrs don't impress easily. They've seen too many divine temper tantrums involving thunderbolts, crop failures, or spontaneous swan transformations. He lifts his flute well, technically, in Alos, and lets loose a run of notes that spiral upward, then dive back down, then shoot sideways as if the sound itself is tipsy. There's laughter in it, mischief, a kind of unruly rhythm that makes your head tilt and your toes wiggle, even though you're trying very hard to look composed. Apollo watches with what can only be described as regal mild interest. That sort of, "oh, you brought a kazoo to a concerto" expression. But the forest disagrees. Birds that had gone silent now chirp in low harmony. Some small animal in the bushes sneezes rhythmically. The trees themselves seem to lean in. You swear a vine just snapped in time with the beat. Now here's where it gets strange. The instrument Marcius is using, the aulos, isn't originally his. It wasn't even meant for satyrs. The story goes that the goddess Athena crafted it first. Supposedly, she wanted to invent a sound unlike any other, a haunting, reedy voice that cut through wind and war alike. And she did. But when she tried playing it in front of a few immortals, something happened. According to the myth, as Athena blew into the aulos, her cheeks puffed out so unbecomingly that the other gods giggled. Not a good look for a goddess of wisdom and war strategy. Furious, she chucked the thing off Mount Olympus, cursing it as she went. "Whoever picks this up shall meet a terrible end," she said, or something along those lines. Very classy. Historians still debate whether the aulos was really invented by Athena or just attributed to her out of poetic spite. Some scholars even think it predated her entirely, hailing from older pre-Hellenic rituals meant to channel ecstatic trance states. Whatever the truth, it ended up in the mortal realm and eventually in the grubby, goatish hands of Marcius. You watch as Marcius blows again, this time slower. The double pipes sing in eerie harmony, like two voices telling secrets to each other over your shoulder. It's not pretty in the way Apollo's lyre is. It's not clean. It's not symmetrical. It wobbles. It's like jazz that hasn't agreed on the key, but you can't stop listening. A dryad slinks down from a tree, moss in her hair, eyes wide. She nods along to the tune. Even the stone slab at the center of the grove seems to hum a little. You're not sure if it's imagination, wine vapors, or myth, but Marcius is making the forest feel. He ends the song with a flourish, one foot kicked out, chin lifted, like a street performer who knows he crushed it. Then he looks over at Apollo, gives a theatrical shrug, and mimes the "your turn" gesture with his flute. Now that's bold. You almost expect Apollo to smite him on the spot, but the god just smiles. That same closed-lipped smile you'd see on someone who's just remembered your deepest, most embarrassing secret from middle school. And that's when you realize the contest is no longer a possibility. It's inevitable. Marcius isn't just playing music. He's challenging hierarchy. He's taking an instrument deemed unworthy by Olympus and wringing meaning from it. He's making nymphs dance and trees weep. And he's doing it without ambrosia or immortality. Just breath and guts. Another historical curiosity in real life, the aulos was often used in military settings to keep hoplites marching in sync, which means Marsyas is, in a weird way, playing the ancient Greek equivalent of a martial fife, while Apollo is strumming divine chamber music. The contrast could not be clearer. You stretch your legs out and feel the cool earth under your heels. The tension in the grove is tangible now, but not heavy. It's the kind of tension that lives backstage before a concert, that quiet buzz of unspoken stakes. Across from you, Apollo rises from his tree. He adjusts his cloak. He looks frankly annoyed, but only the way royalty gets annoyed beautifully. Then he speaks not loudly, not boastfully, but with the kind of voice that makes even rocks lean in a little. If we're playing, he says, then let it be judged. And just like that, the contest is real. Marsyas grins, sharp teeth flashing. Deal, he says, but let's make it interesting. A hush rolls through the grove. Even the donkeys you hadn't noticed until now stop munching on wild parsley. One of them lifts its head and blinks with what you swear is judgmental curiosity. From somewhere behind a tree, a nymph coughs pointedly. Let Midas judge, she says. You blink. Midas? Sure enough, down the hill, accompanied by two guards wearing armor that's 40% gold and 60% poor taste, comes King Midas. Beard freshly oiled, tunic embarrassingly embroidered. The kind of man who wants everyone to know he can afford new sandals daily. You watch as he approaches the makeshift stage, looking entirely too pleased to be included. He steps up to the central slab, takes a goblet someone silently hands him, and raises it to the moon. Let the music begin, he declares, in a voice that cracks halfway through begin. Marsyas winks at you. Apollo rolls his eyes. The crowd shuffles closer. And just like that, the forest is now an amphitheater. You shift on your mossy seat as the crowd resettles around the grove. The forest, once humming with lazy rustles and sleepy whispers, now holds its breath. Even the breeze seems to slow down, unsure whether to rustle leaves or stay respectfully still. All eyes and a surprising number of goat pupils are on Apollo and Marsyas. Apollo steps forward first. He doesn't speak, doesn't bow, doesn't even nod toward Midas, which honestly seems fair. Instead, he lifts his lyre and begins to play. It's different this time. The notes aren't for show, they're storytelling. He paints with music. You hear the sunrise over Delos, his sacred island, and the sound of morning light dripping off temple stones. You hear the hush of prophecy whispered through the laurel leaves at Delphi, the place where his oracle speaks riddles to kings and madmen alike. He strums history, myth, weather. You feel your chest swell, your eyes dampen, not because the song is sad, but because it remembers things you've never lived. A nymph behind you sighs audibly. One of the donkeys blinks very, very slowly. Even Marsyas scratches his chin with one cloven hoof, not unimpressed. Now here's your mainstream historical fact for the night in ancient Greek thought. Apollo was more than music, he represented order. Rationality, balance, harmony not just in chords but in the cosmos. In this moment, he's not just playing a lyre, he's reminding everyone of the rules. But Marsyas didn't come here to follow rules. When Apollo finishes, the grove seems to glow faintly. You half expect a rainbow to appear or some enchanted bird to land on his shoulder, but instead he just steps back, very casual, like, there. I fixed music. Marsyas claps once, slowly. The crowd doesn't dare. Not yet. Then the satyr stands up, brushes imaginary crumbs off his fur, and saunters to the center like a kid walking into detention on purpose. He raises the aulos to his lips, eyes closed. The first note blasts out loud, crooked, disobedient. It makes the nymphs jump. A dryad shrieks, but in delight. And then it begins. Where Apollo's music was sunrise and starlight, Marsyas plays mud and wine and dancing with your feet in the fire pit. It's music for the unwashed and unbothered. It skips scales. It howls. But somehow you feel your body reacting not with reverence, but with rhythm. You glance to your left. A group of satyrs has formed a loose conga line. Someone's passed around a wineskin and is now using a reed to stir it. The grove has shifted. It's no longer a temple, it's a tavern, and Marcius is the bard. Now, for a fringe tidbit, some versions of this myth say that Marcias's music had magical properties. He could charm trees into bending, rocks into dancing, even rivers into rerouting themselves. Wild, right? One poet even claims the aloes had its own mood, and if Marcius played while sad, flowers would close their petals in sympathy. Tonight, though, he's not sad. He's showing off. He finishes with a long, spiraling crescendo that makes you feel like you're falling upward into the stars. Then silence. Not even the donkeys dare to bray. And here it comes. King Midas rises, swaying slightly. Maybe from awe. Maybe from the 3 cups of wine he's already had. He clears his throat, squints, and says, "Well, that was spirited." He turns to Apollo. "Your performance was flawless, of course." Apollo gives a single, perfect nod, like royalty accepting the inevitable. Midas turns to Marcius, but his was real. He wobbles a bit on that word, like it just threw off his balance. There was feeling, fire, passion. He raises his arms. "I declare Marcius the winner of the first round. You brace yourself." Apollo doesn't move. He just stares at Midas, long enough to make Midas start fidgeting with his cuffs. A whisper runs through the grove. Not from lips, but from trees, wind, dirt. That was brave. Historians still argue whether this part of the myth is symbolic or literal. Was Midas making a musical judgment or a political one? Did he truly favor Marcius, or was he just trying to score points with the woodland crowd? No one agrees. But what's clear is this: Apollo does not like toe woes. You glance over at Marcia. He's already sitting back down, sipping from someone else's goblet and making what sounds like a flute-related pun you're too polite to repeat. Apollo clears his throat, loudly. "I propose a second round," he says, voice smooth as olive oil and sharp as obsidian. Midas blinks. I thought." "Same instruments," Apollo interrupts, "but this time, we sing as we play." A gasp goes through the crowd. Some nymphs cover their mouths. A satyr immediately drops his reed pipe into the bushes. You turn to a dryad beside you. She whispers, "That's cheating." You whisper back, "But is it?" And that, my sleepy friend, is the question. Because Apollo can sing, his voice is literal music. Birds mute themselves so they won't be compared. But Marcius, he plays a double pipe, with both lips. And unless he's got a third mouth stashed in his elbow, this is not going to end well. But the satyr only laughs. He lifts his flute, spins it once like a baton, and says, "All right, golden boy, let's sing." And just like that, the stakes rise higher than the treetops, higher than hubris. Because now this isn't just about music. It's about pride. And that never ends gently. You feel it before it starts, like a ripple through your spine, or the moment before thunder decides to speak. Apollo steps forward, once again adjusting nothing, because of course nothing on him is ever out of place. He lifts his lyre, and this time, when he plucks, he opens his mouth too. The sound is, unfortunately, perfect. His voice doesn't sing as much as it unfolds. You don't understand the words, they're not meant for mortals, but you feel them. They land in your chest and bloom outwards. It's like being serenaded by sunlight. Like each note is patting you gently on the head and whispering, "Shh, you'll never be this good." But it's okay. Even the owls have stopped blinking. Apollo's melody tells of the sea being born from chaos, of the stars, arranging themselves into constellations just to have something pretty to look at, of vines growing simply because his song said so. It's transcendent, immortal, completely infuriating. Behind you, one nymph whispers, "He rehearsed." Another mutters, "He is the rehearsal." Here's your historical fact in ancient Greek culture. Singing while playing an instrument was a respected art form known as kytherodia, often performed in temples, royal courts, or anywhere someone needed to make peasants feel inferior. Apollo was the divine patron of this very art, meaning he literally invented the genre he's now competing in. Convenient, right? When he finishes, there's no applause. Just a deep, reverent silence that feels suspiciously smug. Then it's Marcias's turn. You turn to look, hoping maybe he's got a trick up his sleeve. A second satyr hiding in the bushes to hum backup? A magic reed pipe that sings for him? But no. Marcia stands, alone. And already you can see it on his face. He knows he's trapped. He lifts the aloes. He raises it to his lips and stops. Because here's the thing about double pipes, you need both lips, both lungs, your whole mouth. There's no space for words, no room for song. You can't sing and play the Alice any more than you can yodel while blowing up a balloon underwater. Still, he tries. The first sound is more of a honk than a hymn. The second is a wheeze. The third, well, we won't speak of the third. Somewhere a donkey flinches. You feel your heart break a little. Not because he's failing, but because he's trying so hard not to. His cheeks puff, his eyes squint, his legs brace like he's in a windstorm of his own creation. But no song comes. Just air. Just effort. Even the nymphs can't pretend now. One turns away. Another sighs like she's just watched someone try to propose with a breadstick ring. Now, for a quirky tidbit in some lesser-known versions of the myth, Marsyas attempts to hum while playing and ends up passing out from lack of oxygen. In another, he accidentally inhales a bug. None of these end in applause. Still, the satyr lowers his flute. He looks around the grove. No one's laughing, not openly. But the silence is loud, cruelly loud. And then Apollo steps forward, not with grace this time, but with something colder, sharper. His smile has changed. Gone is the artistic serenity. This is something more. Competitive. No, not competitive. Predatory. I think, he says, that concludes the contest. King Midas, to his credit, tries to look busy with his goblet. But Apollo isn't finished. He turns to Midas and says, "Let us hear your judgment." Again. You can almost see the sweat forming beneath Midas's gilded crown. He opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. Well, he begins in terms of technical. Choose, Apollo says, voice as soft as silk but as heavy as stone. Midas gulps. Apollo. Apollo wins the second round. The grove lets out a collective breath it didn't realize it was holding. Some satyrs nod solemnly. Others look at Marsyas with a mixture of pity and respect. You oddly enough feel more admiration for him now than ever, because losing and staying upright while you lose might just be the most heroic thing in this story. Historians still argue whether this round of the contest was always part of the myth or added later to reinforce the divine hierarchy. Some say the addition of singing was symbolic, a metaphor for voice versus instrument, soul versus form. Others think it was just Apollo cheating in a very poetic way. Marsyas doesn't protest. He doesn't stomp or argue or storm off in a musical tantrum. He simply nods, sets his aloes gently on a tree stump, and walks toward the edge of the grove. But Apollo follows. There's tension now, the kind you can't soften with laughter or leaf whispers. The grove seems smaller. The trees lean closer, not out of curiosity but concern. You feel the temperature drop. Apollo calls out, "You played well," for a satyr. And it's that last part, those three words, that change everything. Marsyas turns. His face isn't angry. It's tired. A kind of tired that no sleep can fix. "Was that ever the point?" he asked quietly. You don't hear Apollo's reply, if there even is one. All you feel is the silence that follows, as heavy as thunder clouds that choose not to strike yet. The grove dims. Not because the sun has set it already had, but because something brighter has pulled away. And as Marsyas disappears into the trees, Apollo stands alone. A victor, yes, but maybe not a hero. You remain seated beneath your tree, unsure whether to clap or cry or crawl under a rock and stay there. The air is still, but charged like it's waiting for something else, something worse. Marsyas is gone now. Just shadows and hoofprints in the dirt. His flute still sits there on the stump, oddly forlorn, like a dog waiting for its owner to come back from a long walk that may never end. Apollo hasn't moved. He just stands in the center of the grove, the lyre in one hand, the other now slowly curling into a fist. He's glowing faintly, but not the gentle radiance from before. This light is sharper, colder, less sunbeam, more scalpel. Now comes the part of the story where things twist. See, Apollo may have won, technically, musically, mythically. But gods don't just win. They conquer. And sometimes they punish. Let him be brought back, he says quietly. You glance around. A satyr coughs awkwardly. A nymph pretends to tie a non-existent sandal strap. But no one moves. Until a pair of dryads, faces blank as parchment, glide silently into the forest. The crowd doesn't cheer, doesn't boo. It just waits. Here's your mainstream historical fact in many Greek myths. Gods were not moral paragons. Far from it. They were forces capricious, impulsive, and prone to overreaction. Worshipping them wasn't about adoration. It was about survival. Keep them pleased or keep your head down. Preferably both. When the dryads return, Marsyas is with them. Still upright, still quiet, still somehow proud. He doesn't resist, doesn't ask questions. He walks back into the grove like a man returning to an argument he knows he lost 3 years ago. Apollo meets him in the middle. And now, here's where the myth fractures. Different versions go different ways. Some gentle, some horrifying. But all agree on one thing: Apollo decided that merely winning wasn't enough. He had to make a point. According to the most common telling, Apollo binds Marsyas to a tree. Not roughly, not cruelly, just with finality. Like it's part of the music. Like the conclusion to a sad song no one wanted to hear. The dryads raise vines that twist around the satyr's arms, his legs, his torso. A second later, the bark itself begins to shift beneath him, cracking, groaning, accepting. The tree holds him like memory, or maybe like regret. And then Apollo steps forward with a knife. Yes, a knife. Not a divine thunderbolt. Not some elegant metaphysical curse. Just a blade. Iron or bronze or something, God-forged and unnameable. It catches the moonlight. Marsyas doesn't flinch. Here's a fringe tidbit in some versions. Apollo doesn't just kill Marsyas. He flays him, peels back his skin inch by inch while the grove watches in stunned silence. Some say this was a warning to other challengers. Others claim it was symbolic, stripping away pride, ego, mortal arrogance. But again, historians still argue. Some modern scholars believe the flaying never happened. That it was a metaphor added later by poets to dramatize the dangers of overreaching. That perhaps Marsyas was exiled or turned to stone or absorbed into the forest itself. A cautionary tale in the shape of a man. Still, you sit there, unmoving, watching this moment freeze in time. Whether you believe the gruesome version or the metaphorical one, the result is the same. Marsyas disappears from the world as he was. And in his place, something else is left behind. A tree. Not just any tree. A tall, pale poplar with bark that peels in long, curling strips. Its leaves shimmer in the moonlight like tears. Apollo lowers his blade. The grove is silent. Even the donkeys have moved to the far edge, pretending to be very interested in a bush. You catch a glimpse of King Midas, now looking very small, adjusting his robes like he wishes he could melt into them. He knows what's coming next. So do you. Apollo turns. Midas, he says. The king jumps, drops his goblet. Yes, you chose wrong. Ah, well, our music is subjective, you see, and Apollo doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. With a flick of his fingers, he gestures toward Midas. The air wobbles slightly like heat off pavement. And then Midas clutches his head. Gasps ripple through the grove. And you see it. His ears. They grow. Lucking. Fuzzy. Floppy. Donkey ears. They twitch once. Then again. One ear flops sideways, the other flutters indignantly. Midas squeals. Not very king-like. Apollo turns away. Now here's another historical fact. Tucked in like a footnote, the story of Midas's donkey ears became a popular comedic motif in Greek plays. His shame, his attempts to hide it with elaborate hats or golden crowns, became a favorite subject of satire. the mighty king with the ears of a beast, all for daring to think with his heart instead of his hierarchy. Midas stumbles away, trying to cover his ears with his hands, his robe, a leaf, anything. But the grove sees. Everyone sees. Marsyas is gone. Apollo is silent. And the music has ended. The grove begins to empty, quietly, uneasily. The spell has broken. The contest is over, but no one cheers the victor. Even the nymphs walk softly, eyes downcast. The satyrs slink away into the shadows. You remain, just for a moment longer. And you listen. Somewhere far off, carried on a breeze that doesn't belong to this world, you hear the faintest whisper of a flute. Still playing, still defiant, still Marsyas. You don't move for a long time. The grove is nearly empty now, but your body won't let you leave yet. Something about the silence feels unfinished, not threatening, just unresolved. Like the last chord of a song that never quite returns to the home note. You stare at the poplar tree where Marsyas once stood. It's tall now, taller than the others. The bark glows faintly, as if infused with some stubborn memory. The leaves rustle in a wind that doesn't touch your hair, and every now and then, a low breathy sound escapes from the space between two branches like a whisper that isn't quite brave enough to be a voice. The flute is gone. You notice that suddenly. The stump where Marsyas left it sits bare, damp from dew. Someone or something took it. Maybe the wind, maybe the story itself. Now here's a curious scholarly debate to drift off to in some versions of this myth. The Aulus the flute was tossed into a river after Marsyas's punishment, and the waters took on a mournful tone. In other tellings, the instrument floated for miles, washing ashore in strange lands where other foolish mortals picked it up and were never heard from again. Whatever the truth, it's no longer here. You rise slowly, your joints creaking just a little louder than you'd prefer. The forest feels heavier now, not with menace, but with history. Every leaf seems to hold a footnote, every branch an unsung verse. You step away from the stage, the stone slab where Apollo played, where judgment was passed, where a king learned that music may be subjective, but divine wrath is not. And that's when you hear the donkey. Not just any donkey, a very well-dressed one. Midas. You spot him behind a low bush, wrestling with what appears to be a bejeweled turban. He's muttering to himself. You sneak closer because of course you do. Don't pretend like you wouldn't. I can't let the court see. Can't trust the barbers. Maybe a crown? No, too obvious. Perhaps a, helmet. The poor man is in full crisis mode. His donkey ears twitch with every thought. He ties and unties the turban 4 times in 30 seconds. It's like watching a puppet show designed by anxiety. Now for your quirky tidbit, legend says Midas managed to hide his donkey ears for quite a long time. No one knew. No one dared to ask. He wore elaborate headpieces, hooded robes, even started a new fashion trend in oversized hats. People thought he was just being eccentric. Rich king things. But of course, secrets this big eventually need an audience. One day, Midas couldn't take it anymore. The weight of not being able to laugh at his own joke, because he was the joke, became unbearable. So he did what any reasonable cursed monarch might do. He dug a hole in the earth, deep into the sand, just outside the palace walls. And he whispered, "My king has donkey ears," he said. "My king has donkey ears." Over and over, into the hole. Then he covered it, patted the dirt flat, walked away. Now scholars still argue whether this next part was metaphor or divine prank. But supposedly, months later, reeds began to grow on that very spot. Tall, wild, whispering reeds. And when the wind blew through them, they sang. They sang exactly what Midas had whispered. "My king has donkey ears." Over, and over, and over again. Soon everyone knew. And Midas? Well, he was never taken quite as seriously again. You step back from the bush and leave the poor man to his turban wrestling. He doesn't see you, or maybe he does and just pretends not to. Either way, his ears give one final twitch of resignation. As you make your way down a shaded path, you hear music again. Not Apollo, not Marsyas. Something softer. It's the wind through the trees. But there's a rhythm now. The rustle has tempo. The owl hoots in a 44-time signature. A frog croaks like a bassoonist just clearing his throat. It's subtle, but it's there. The world has remembered the contest. And somewhere deep in the myth's marrow, the story continues to breathe. You pass a dryad carving shapes into a tree with her fingertip. A crescent moon, a double flute, a pair of donkey ears. She catches your eye but doesn't speak, just nods once and keeps carving. Everything in this forest is part of the tale. You think back to Apollo's performance, perfect, divine, unforgettable. But it didn't make you move. Marcia's song did. Even in its chaos, especially in its chaos, it was wild, mortal, flawed, but honest. And as you take one last look at the poplar tree, the wind picks up again. You swear you hear a few notes, reedy, wavering, beautifully imperfect. The forest path begins to shift beneath your feet, not dramatically, just enough that you realize it's gently herding you toward something. The moss seems thicker now and softer, a sort of green hush. Even the animals have retreated deeper into their burrows, as though the grove is putting itself to bed. But you're not done yet. You reach a clearing you hadn't seen before. It's quieter than the rest, shaped like a bowl in the earth, with reeds growing thick at the edges. They wave lazily, though there's barely any breeze. You crouch down and brush your hand over a few soft, hollow, and whispering nonsense if you lean in close. Nonsense or confession? My king has donkey ears, one almost says. You smile a little. Maybe the reeds remember. This clearing, you realize, isn't part of the contest's official stage. It's more of a footnote, a coda. And in the center, nestled between a circle of stones, lies something oddly familiar. A broken owlus, two reeds, split down the middle, slightly charred on one end, worn smooth in the places where fingers once danced. One string of braided leather, knotted like someone couldn't bear to untie it, and a faint smell of wine and pine sap, as if it still remembers being held. You pick it up. Don't worry, you're not about to become cursed or flayed or immortalized in a comedy play. The myth's magic doesn't work like that. It's passed through stories, not through souvenirs. Still, holding it gives you a moment, a connection, a flash of the satyr who played his lungs out in a god's world. And here's your historical tie-in for the night the Aulus wasn't just used in contest myths. It had a very real and respected role in ancient Greek life. It was a staple at sacrifices, funerals, athletic events, and dramatic plays. Athenians believed its haunting dual tones helped focus the mind and bring emotional clarity, something Marsyas, if nothing else, provided in abundance. You sit with the instrument for a while. The reeds are silent now. There's no music left in them, but you can still feel the outline of the melody, the places where joy lived, the stains where spit and breath once made myth. Then a rustle behind you. You turn slowly, expecting maybe another nymph or a rabbit with strong opinions. But it's a goat, just a goat. It stares at you, chews something indeterminate, and blinks like it knows secrets. Hey, buddy, you whisper. The goat blinks again. It walks to the center of the clearing, sniffs the broken flute, then without ceremony sits on it. You want to laugh, but the moment feels too sacred. So you just nod. Fair enough. Because Marsyas was a satyr, after all, half man, half goat. Maybe this was always where his story was supposed to end, not with applause, not with tragedy, but with a goat quietly sitting on the wreckage of a legend. You lie back, letting the earth do its slow cradle thing. Above you, the stars are doing that Greek mythology show-off bit. Again, Orion to your left, his belt. Shimmering, the Pleiades clustered like gossiping fireflies, and somewhere, the lyre itself, Lyra, the constellation shaped after Apollo's sacred instrument. But there's no flute in the sky, no constellation for the Olos. You frown a little. That feels unfair. Then again, maybe Marsyas wouldn't have wanted one. He didn't play for immortality. He played for the same reason anyone ever really does, for the joy of it. For the thrill of making something beautiful, even if it's messy, even if it gets you in trouble, even if you lose. Now here's a bit of scholarly speculation to doze off with some archaeologists believe the Alos was intentionally left out of later celestial lore, perhaps due to its connection with tragedy or because it was considered too raw, too untamed. But others argue it lives on in spirit, in every gust of wind that whistles through reeds, or every time a human dares to breathe music into something the gods once rejected. You yawn not from boredom but from the gentle pull of sleep. Your limbs sink into the moss. The goat hasn't moved. You wonder if it's part of the forest, or a very quiet divine prank. And as your eyes begin to close, you think one last thought. Marcius didn't win, but he wasn't forgotten. Because you're here now, holding the end of his song, you dream without sleeping. Or maybe you sleep without dreaming. It's hard to tell. The line between myth and memory blurs out here, where time folds in on itself like a well-worn parchment. When you finally stir again, the goat is gone. So is the broken Aulus. The clearing feels just a little emptier, like the stage after the actors have bowed and left only dust motes behind. You rise slowly and continue down a new path, one you didn't see before, perhaps because it wasn't there until the story needed it to be. That's how myths work. They appear when you ask the right question, then vanish when you try too hard to hold on to them. The trees grow older here, not just taller but more aware. Their bark has grooves like frown lines. The moss on them seems to think. You move quietly, respectfully. Even your footsteps know to whisper now. Eventually, you find yourself by a stream. It babbles gently just enough to remind you that the world is still moving, even if your pace has slowed to a drowsy crawl. And there, etched into a rock beside the water, is a carving. Two instruments, a lyre and a double flute. One whole, one cracked. Beneath them a pair of ears. Long, floppy, slightly ridiculous. You smile despite yourself. Because this is the part no one writes songs about, but everyone remembers and whispers the aftermath. The echo. What lingers after gods pack up their lightning and mortals clean up the mess. You think of King Midas again, of his secret, of the way he whispered it into the earth, hoping the dirt wouldn't tattle. And yet it did. Now, for a curious side note, one historians find surprisingly relevant. The myth of Midas's ears wasn't always just a punchline. In some interpretations, it became a metaphor for censorship, for rulers who couldn't tolerate dissent, who punished those with different tastes literally. A commentary, some say, on the danger of silencing honesty. You crouch beside the stream and dip your fingers in. The water's cold but not unkind. It flows over pebbles worn smooth by centuries of secrets. Then in the distance you hear something, faint but unmistakable. Singing. Not divine, not perfect, human. You follow the sound. It leads you up a small slope, through a copse of cypress trees to a strange little hill. And there's no crowd, no stage. Just a flat rock and a man sitting cross-legged beside it, playing a worn-out lyre. His fingers stumble now and then. He mutters when a string buzzes, but he keeps playing. You sit quietly across from him. He sings a song you don't know, but somehow understand. It's about a man who challenged a god, about music that wasn't beautiful, but true, about a king who learned the hard way that taste is not always wise, and about a grove, this grove where once a contest made the wind stand still. The man finishes, looks up. Never met him, he says softly, but I play this every year. In case he's listening, you nod, because somehow you know he is. Here's a historical aside to hum as you rest. Some rural festivals in Phrygia and nearby regions were rumored to include secret rites honoring Marcius. Not Apollo, Marcius, the challenger, the loser. Because sometimes people remember not the ones who win, but the ones who dared. The lyre player packs up his strings and slips away into the trees without another word. He leaves behind nothing but footprints and the faint echo of a chorus. You lie down where he sat. Let the flat rock cradle your spine. Let the wind tickle your ears like it's trying to tell you one more thing. Let the earth murmur to you the way it murmured to Midas. And somewhere, just beyond hearing, you know there's a reed, shaking slightly. Not from wind, but from breath. Still there. Still playing. You remain on the warm rock a while longer, eyes half-lidded, letting the trees sway above like they're waving you into deeper rest. The myth has settled around you like a well-worn blanket. But it hasn't ended. Not yet. Eventually you sit up and stretch slowly, sleepily, like you've been inside someone else's story, and now have to remember how to move your own limbs again. You wander downhill following the stream, which has grown a little louder now. It sings to itself, babbling nonsense in a dozen dialects of ripple and splash. Somewhere upstream, perhaps it passed through a place where reeds still hum secrets. You wonder if it remembers being sung to by Marcius himself. The path narrows and you duck beneath a hanging branch, brushing aside leaves that smell faintly of fig and laurel. The forest is beginning to lighten around the edges, not because the sun is rising, but because the myth is softening. Rounding off, winding down, and then through the trees you see something odd. A statue, not broken, not grand, just odd. It's carved from stone, slightly crooked, covered in moss. A satyr. Hooves planted wide, flute at the ready, grinning with teeth too large for his face. You walk closer. There's no inscription, no offerings left at the base, but someone has draped a faded wreath of ivy around its neck, and tucked between two toes is a single reed pipe, cracked but clean. You sit beside it and exhale. Because this, you realize, is how stories survive, not in golden monuments or divine punishment, but in the small, unlabeled things. A statue made by someone who couldn't forget. A flute played once a year. A whisper in the reeds that no one asked for, but everyone hears. Here's a strange historical wrinkle in certain remote areas of Anatolia. Travelers reported local shrines to the musician, a half-human figure believed to bless fields with rain if honored with wind instruments. Some even claimed hearing melodies from the hills during storms, melodies no one could trace. The descriptions vary, but the mood, the grin, the double flute, it all smells like Marcius. You take one last look at the statue and keep walking. Not far ahead, you spot a fork in the path. One side leads deeper into the forest. The other, upward, a gentle hill crowned by something familiar, another poplar tree. It stands alone, haloed by birds' song and breeze, swaying like it's remembering choreography from a dream. You follow the upward path. Each step feels like walking through velvet fog. Your thoughts slow, stretch, yawn. The weight of the story is lifting, not vanishing, but easing. It no longer presses on your chest. It hums beneath your feet. You reach the tree and sit beneath it. The bark is smooth. The leaves dapple sunlight that isn't quite real. And when the wind brushes through them, it doesn't whistle or rustle, it sighs. It sounds like an exhale after a difficult solo. And then just beneath the wind's hush, you hear something else. A voice. Yours? No. Older. Thicker with dust and wine and reed music. It says only one word. Play. You reach into your cloak. Yes, you still have that cloak, remember? And find a reed pipe. Small. Simple. Not perfect, but real. You lift it to your lips. You breathe. No music comes. Not yet. But the forest leans in. Because this isn't a story about gods. It's a story about the nerve of trying. The absurd bravery of blowing air into a reed and hoping the wind listens. Of playing something flawed in a world that worships perfection. And tonight you are Marcius. Just for a moment. Not because you're ready, but because you showed up anyway. You sit quietly, reed pipe in hand, the breeze waiting with the patience only myths possess. You try again. A soft breath. A squeaky note. Then a second, warmer, rounder. Still no masterpiece, but the forest doesn't scoff. It listens. It welcomes the wobble. Maybe that's why this place still hums with Marcius's memory, because here, imperfection isn't a flaw. It's the offering. You blow a few more notes, tentative at first, then more confidently. The tune doesn't go anywhere in particular. It loops, stumbles, meanders. But that's fine. You're not composing an epic. You're just breathing with intention. Behind you, a cicada starts up again, giving your melody a lazy percussion section. Somewhere farther off, a bird adds a solo. It sings three notes, just three, but they land perfectly in time with your final phrase. And for a moment, you're not playing at the forest. You're playing with it. You lower the pipe. Smile. Here's a musical curiosity for your sleepy brain, ancient Greek thinkers, yes. Even the serious ones like Pythagoras and Plato believed music wasn't just a form of art. It was math, soul, and cosmos, a reflection of harmony in the universe. To them, dissonance wasn't failure, it was anticipation, a necessary step before resolution. So maybe Marcius wasn't wrong. Maybe he was just early. Then you lean back against the poplar tree. Its trunk is warm, as if it remembers being part of someone, or still is. You don't ask questions. Myths rarely answer them anyway, not directly. Instead, you close your eyes and listen again. This time, the forest plays to you. The wind brushes through leaves, tickling them into melody. The grass whispers in triplets. A distant owl hoots like a tired metronome. And beneath it all, the gentle percussion of your own heartbeat, slower now, steadier, softened by the long story you've walked through. Now, for a little-known literary thread, one late Roman poet reimagined Marcius not as a satyr, but as a mortal musician gifted with divine lungs. He claimed that Marsyas survived the contest not through triumph, but through transformation. That he became the reed. That when the gods flayed his skin, they revealed something eternal beneath it. Breath, song, hope. That version never caught on, probably because it didn't involve enough punishment. But still, it lingers in footnotes and forgotten scrolls like Marsyas himself. You open your eyes again. The world hasn't changed, but you feel different. Lighter. You stand and give the poplar a gentle pat. Not thanks exactly, just acknowledgement. Myths don't need gratitude. They just need remembering. As you descend from the hilltop, your pipe tucked away, the air grows warmer. The forest, once tense with contest, now feels like a tavern after closing quiet, intimate, smelling of old music and cooling embers. You come across another fork. This time a signpost waits, carved sloppily. Tilted, it reads, Temple, Tavern, somewhere in between. You choose the third. Of course you do. The path is narrow but gentle. It's lined with wild thyme and sleepy bees. You think of Apollo again, not as a tyrant, but as a symbol. A reminder that perfection can be lonely. That to always win is to never feel the quiver of almost. And you think of Marcius, not as a fool, but as a question that still hasn't been answered. Now here's something to hum as you wander in some Byzantine texts. Marsyas is referred to not as a cautionary tale, but as a friend of the song, a minor protector of the breath. Not a saint, not a demon, just someone who tried. And that, you suspect, is all most myths are. Someone who tried. The wind kicks up again, swirling dust around your feet. You squint. There's a clearing ahead. You smell roasted chestnuts. You hear low laughter. And you realize the tavern might still be open after all. You follow the scent roasted chestnuts, maybe a hint of spiced wine, and something that smells suspiciously like goat cheese left out too long. Not unpleasant, just rustic. The clearing opens up gradually, revealing a structure that looks like a tavern only if you squint and believe in generosity. It's part tree, part stone, part hopeful architecture. One wall leans inward, another outward, and the roof is mostly moss with aspirations of being a second garden. But the light spilling from inside is warm. You step closer. Laughter drifts through the cracks. Not boisterous revelry, just the low, exhausted chuckle of people who've stayed up too long. Telling stories that turned into philosophy and then back into nonsense again. You push open the crooked wooden door. No one turns. That's how you know you're welcome. The place is small, one hearth, a few uneven tables, a bar made from a repurposed cart. Every chair looks like it survived a minor siege. The walls are cluttered with strange objects, masks, broken instruments, a helmet with feathers glued on, a cracked lyre hanging from a nail like a retired gladiator. Behind the bar stands a woman polishing a cup that looks clean enough already. She doesn't greet you. She just tilts her head toward a seat by the fire, as if to say, "You look like someone who needs to sit and not talk for a while." So you do. And that's when you notice it in the far corner, just past the crackling logs, sits a figure. Not God, not mortal, not whole. He's playing a flute softly, slowly, almost out of habit. Two reeds bound together with a worn strip of leather. His hooves are propped on a stool. His hair's a mess. His eyes are closed. You know who it is. And before your heart has time to catch up, he speaks. "You're late," Marcias says, without opening his eyes. You blink. "Open your mouth. Then shut it." "It's fine," he adds. "So was I." He doesn't look like the defiant challenger from the grove. He doesn't look like the victim either. He looks like someone who's been through story, through song, through time. "Still playing," you manage to say. He shrugs. Beats sulking. He stops playing, finally opens his eyes and peers at you like he's deciding whether or not you're worth one of his better jokes. Apparently you pass. "I heard you tried the flute." You nod. He grins. They all do. He gestures toward the hearth. You glance around and sure enough, tucked in corners and shadows are instruments, flutes, lyres, drums made of bark and twine. Some are broken, some perfectly whole, all waiting. Here's a historical footnote to cradle while you sip. Your imaginary mulled wine, some ancient rural traditions held that every lost melody floated up into the night sky and became a star. Constellations, they believed, were songs too stubborn to fade. So perhaps Lyra is Apollo's. But maybe Marcias got a few notes in after all. "You think I lost," Marcias says, as if reading your thoughts. You hesitate. "Didn't you?" He snorts. "Apollo thinks so." A log shifts in the fire. Sparks dance. "Let me tell you a secret," he adds, leaning in. "He didn't flay me because I was wrong. He flayed me because I was right and loud about it." He leans back again, takes another breath through his flute, plays two notes, lets them hang there like smoke. Besides, he shrugs, he plays for temples. I play for taverns. He points his flute at you. And dreamers. You're not sure what to say to that. So you sip your wine, which you're only now realizing has appeared in your hand. Cinnamon. Fair. A little too sweet, but warming all the same. He resumes playing. A different tune this time. Sleepier. Simpler. You lean back in your seat listening. Outside, the forest hums. The trees know this song. Here's a softer truth. Music isn't made to last. It's made to echo, to shiver down your spine once and then let go. But stories remember the echo. That's why you're here. Why Marcius is still playing. Why the poplar tree sways even when there's no wind. Why somewhere a satyr's laughter still haunts every flute. The fire crackles. Marcias's eyelids grow heavier. Your own begin to drift. "Stay as long as you like," he murmurs. "No judgment here, just rhythm." And as the tune continues, winding like a sleepy river, the tavern settles into silence. Not absence, just rest. You wake not sharply but gently. The kind of waking that feels like floating up from a warm underwater dream. The tavern's fire has died down to a quiet glow. The air smells like ember and old laughter. You're not sure how long you've been sitting here, and it doesn't seem to matter. Marcius is gone. Only his reed pipe remains, resting on the stool where his hooves had been propped. A quiet thank you from the myth itself. You rise slowly, your joints cracking just enough to remind you that even in dreams, you're still wonderfully mortal. The tavern is empty now. Chairs stacked, mugs dried, and the wall where the cracked lyre had hung, it's gone too. Or maybe it never was. You step outside. The night has grown cooler, blanketing the forest in layers of silver shadow. The stars above seem closer now, lower like curious eyes peeking over the clouds to see how your story ends. Lyra shines brightest, of course, always watching, always reminding. But you're thinking about the songs that didn't become stars, about the breathy, broken tunes of satyrs, the songs that made feet move, not just minds. You find the path again without looking. It bends toward the left, deeper into the trees. You follow it, not because you know where it leads, but because after all this, you trust it. And after a while, you hear it. Faint, irregular, carried on the breeze. Music. Not Apollo's pristine notes. Not Marcius's howling flute. Something else. Something human. You come to a glade where villagers, yes, villagers are gathered. Children with willow whistles, elders clapping on the offbeat, someone thumping a half-broken drum. It's not beautiful. It's not polished. But it's alive. You stand at the edge, unnoticed, wrapped in darkness and soft leaves. A boy steps up with a double pipe. You flinch a little, but he plays. 3 notes. Out of tune. The reeds squeak. The crowd cheers. And suddenly you realize this too is part of Marcius's myth. Not the contest, not the flaying, but the ripple effect, the legacy of noise, rhythm, joy. The defiant act of making music not because you're perfect, but because you exist. You watch the boy try again. This time the notes come clearer. The rhythm steadies. Somewhere in the forest a poplar shivers. Now here's your historical nugget. The satyr Marsyas was also associated with the river near Selene in Phrygia. Some believe the river was formed from his tears. Others said it sang faintly in a voice no one could quite place. And though the river was real, ancient travelers swore it changed its course during certain festivals as if listening. You wonder how many gods ever made rivers cry. You stay a while longer just watching. No one tries to win. No one is flayed. They play because the night is long and warm and they can. And then you leave, as quietly as you came, carrying nothing in your hands but something humming in your chest. A rhythm, a pulse. You think of Midas again, of his poor ears, of his secret shouted into the earth. You find a patch of reeds nearby, and though you don't need to, you whisper, Marcius was here. The reeds say nothing, but the wind carries your voice like a lullaby, spreading it over stones, under roots, between stars. And perhaps, just perhaps, he hears it. Not with ears, but with story. You walk slowly now, not because you're tired though you are, but because the forest has changed. Or maybe it's you. Every tree you pass feels familiar. Every shadow carries the weight of something you've already felt. This isn't just a path anymore. It's a memory. You reach a shallow ravine, crossed by a fallen tree that acts as a bridge. The bark has worn smooth from centuries of bare feet and hooves. You step carefully, placing your hands on the rough wood to balance yourself. Beneath you the stream gurgles lazily, no longer mournful, just curious. And on the other side a surprise, a circle of stones. Simple, unadorned. No runes, no carvings. Just a ring, as if the forest made a place to sit and listen. In the center a fire pit long gone cold, filled with gray ash and a few scattered bones of old branches. You sit. No music this time. No distant flute. Just the hum of night, the soft crackle of leaves shifting under their own weight. You pick up a small stone, toss it into the pit, watch the dust scatter, and then you speak, not loudly, just to the forest, just to Marcius. I understand now. You don't need to say what. He'd know. And that's when you feel it, not sound, not wind, but something in between. A presence, not haunting, not divine, just there. You close your eyes and let it wash over you. You remember his smirk, his stubbornness, the way he didn't flinch. You remember Apollo's smug smile, his perfection, his cruelty dressed up in melody. You remember Midas's ears, and the secret he tried so hard to bury. And you remember that no one came here for perfection. They came for song. Here's something historians rarely agree on. Was Marcius foolish or brave? Was he punished for pride or simply for being audible in a world where gods demand silence? Scholars write essays. Artists paint interpretations. But the truth is simpler. Marcius played. He knew he couldn't win, but he played. You stand and stretch, brushing ash from your palms. The fire pit is quiet but no longer sad, just resting, like it knows there's more music to come someday from someone else foolish enough to care. You walk on, through vines, over moss, past a pair of owls who seem to nod at you in approval. The sky is clearer now. Fewer stars, but brighter. Lyra hangs low, watching. You whisper, "You didn't win, but you're still here." It feels right to say it aloud. You emerge from the trees into a wide clearing bathed in soft moonlight. In the center is a single stool. On it, a new aloes clean, whole waiting. You don't pick it up. You just smile, nod once, and sit beside it. Not every song must be played. Some simply need a witness. And you? You've witnessed. You've walked with gods and goat men, kings and fools, tunes and silences. You've followed a myth through its laughter and sorrow, and now you're here on the edge of sleep, held in the arms of story. So here's one last curious echo to fall asleep with. Some say that every time a flute is played in defiance badly, joyfully, recklessly, Marsyas smiles. Not because he wants to win, but because someone remembered. You don't move from the clearing. Not yet. The stool and its waiting aloes remain untouched beside you, but that doesn't seem to bother the forest. In fact, it seems rather proud you didn't touch it, as if restraint itself were a kind of music. The moon has climbed higher, or maybe it's just leaned in closer. Everything in this place glows now, not brightly, but warmly, like candlelight through parchment. You take a breath, the kind that settles into your ribs and says, "You made it." And you did. You think back, not just on the contest, but on the quieter things. The way Apollo played without flaw and without feeling. The way Marcia stumbled but made the forest dance. The dryads who watched stone-faced. The donkeys who, honestly, might have been the wisest judges. And Midas, poor, confused Midas, who chose with his heart and paid with his ears. You wonder, if he had to choose again, would he do it differently? Probably not. Because the truth this myth holds beneath all the laughter and punishment and poetry is this: sometimes it's not about who's right. It's about who dared. You lie back in the grass. The earth is cool beneath you, like a pillow offered by the past. You look up. The stars swirl lazily across the sky, not rushing anywhere, not performing, just being. And Lyra, the harp constellation, twinkles smugly as ever. But you don't look away, because now, you know, there's music outside of constellations. There's song in the wind, in breath, in flawed fingers and cracked reeds and stubborn rhythms that don't fit inside golden frames. And Marsyas? He didn't lose. He was simply heard. That was enough. The leaves above sigh gently, brushing each other like pages being turned. You close your eyes, not to escape the myth, but to carry it with you. Because this isn't just the end of a story. It's the start of an echo. And one day, maybe someone will find your reed in the grass, lift it, play one broken note, and smile. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. You're still here, lying beneath the trees, beneath the stars, beneath the weight of a very old story that asked only to be remembered. Your breath has slowed. The air is soft now, each inhale wrapped in moss, each exhale folded into myth. The forest no longer watches you. It embraces you. The wind, once teasing, now drapes gently over your shoulders like a shawl. The poplars hum faintly in the background, long, deep notes that don't demand your attention. They're just there, like the sea, like silence. You feel your body growing heavier, but not in the way that burdens. This weight comforts, roots you, grounds you. Your fingers curl slightly in the grass. The flute beside you rests still. It won't ask for anything tonight. You did enough. The story did enough. Let your muscles soften now. Let your eyes, already half closed, begin to drift. There's no more music to chase. No more gods to impress. No more contest to win or lose. Just this, the rhythm of your breath, the hush of leaves, and the faintest echo of a satyr's grin somewhere in the dark. Sleep now. Sleep in a world that remembers what you've heard. Sleep with the confidence of someone who tried. And when you wake, let the song stay with you. Quiet, warm, imperfect. Yours.